So this session is being recorded. My name is Jessica Fox. I'm an author and filmmaker and delighted to see everyone here. Thank you so much for joining us, especially Tricia. Tricia is one of my favorite authors, so I'm like, and one of my favorite people, so I'm kind of geeking out that she's here. She's a best-selling author of many, many series. She often appears in the New York Times bestseller list, the Wall Street Journal's bestseller list. She writes fun, magical, very addictive romance that I think is incredibly empowering to women, builds beautiful worlds. And again, she has multiple series located in different places, like the Mystic Cove series in Ireland or the Enchanted Highlands series in Scotland. She's a master world builder, my favorite, and also is in a place right now that's far warmer than most of us. So she's calling us from the Caribbean. Tricia, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi everyone.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you so
haven't
much for
made any friends with that though.
No, I know. Everyone clicks off. And
Tricia, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
yes, so as Jess said, I am a author. I'm a New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today best-selling author. I have done that all as an indie, what we call indie publisher. So that means I run my own business. I self-publish all of my own books, and I have sold well over 3 million copies now. Most of which I would say like 65 to 75% of those are digital. So when we're talking about the digital landscape and the achievements that you can do, that is what I'm talking about. In the indie world, ebooks are king. And with running your own business and being an indie publisher, you can control so much of the audience experience. You can control your pricing. You can control what you want your readers to see about the worlds that you want to build, and you can control the audience engagement, and you can also build your mailing list, build your following. So that is what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
Tricia, that's amazing. You know, one of the things that I think's so inspiring, regardless of the medium that you work in. So I know we have some filmmakers here, some writers, folks who are actually interested in game and gaming. One of the things that's so powerful is that you didn't wait for permission from a lot of these gatekeepers to make what you wanted to make, to create a business out of it, or to tell the stories you wanted to tell. So how did this even start? Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here?
So I started self-publishing when it was like the wild, wild west. It was brand new. It was completely frowned on. It was like, this is, ooh, what are you doing? This is so embarrassing. But so the story I had wanted to write was actually my dog got stolen. And so my dog got stolen. And this is when I was living back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I spent 3.5 weeks tracking him down. There was like death threats, police involved. I rescued another dog along the way, and I got him returned to me. And so I thought, I really want to tell this story just because I wanted to raise awareness and I wanted to donate some money to animal shelters. And like, just, it was a story of how you can change the outcome of something. And I just thought I wanted to do that. So I started querying agents. I have no background in writing books or the publishing process or anything with that. So I started querying agents, and I just kept getting no, 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 no. And I finally just kind of did this like line in the sand. I've been reading about self-publishing. I had a bit of a marketing background, and I said, okay, I'm going to give this a go. Like, I'm just going to, if after this date, everyone keeps saying no to me, I'm just going to go out on my own and try this. And so I got all the no's, and then I wrote the book myself. I hired my own editors. I used a picture of my own on the cover, and I published it. I went at the time, there was like one forum online talking about self-publishing. So I just was on it every day. I was talking to other authors, what they were doing. And then I just started advertising it like every week. So by advertising, I mean, I didn't have money to advertise it. So I was going to animal Facebook groups and going to stuff and saying,
Wow.
"Hey, do you know that people steal dogs? You know, this happens." I was just so I made it my list every week, just try to get into a group, try to get into a forum. And then I saved up enough money to run a small advertising campaign with just a email newsletter list at that time that was still growing. I hit the New York Times bestseller list with it.
Oh, that's so
And then I'm
impressive.
like, shit, what do I do now? What am I going to write next? Because now I have these New York Times bestseller credits, and hopefully my dog doesn't get stolen again, but obviously I have a voice and people are sort of responding to the story. So what do I do? Where do I go from here? So what that was a really interesting crash course in learning how to write and package a story and deliver it to the audience at large. But I wasn't going to keep writing these narrative nonfiction stories because I, wasn't really in the animal space aside from that one particular story with my animal being stolen. So it took me another year or two to truly give myself permission to write stories of my heart, which is that like brain candy, romance, escapist, romantasy type stories. And I just said, okay, I'm gonna write the stories that I love, that I read all the time. So what I did is for the first 6 months, I picked a pen name and I just started writing and self-publishing under that pen name. And that gave me freedom. I didn't tell anyone about it. Nobody could judge me. No one would know. And that gave me total freedom to like make my own errors, learn how to build my own audience. And I will say this, from the beginning of anything you do, treat it as if you are going to be wildly successful with it. So from the beginning, build your mailing list, build your Facebook presence, build your Instagram, TikTok, social media. Now, if you're just doing a pen name and you don't want people to know about it, the only thing you need to do is get a free newsletter sign up and have that in the back matter of your books. Start collecting emails of your followers, because if that pen name ends up taking off, then you can reach your audience directly.
Wow.
So 6 months of that, and once I was making about $1,000 a month, I went, okay, I have a voice. I know how I'm getting the rhythm of how to upload these stories, how to do these covers, how to get them edited. And then I wrote 2 full books and a novella. I went out under Tricia O'Malley, so I started a brand new name.
Is this
And
on Amazon? Sorry, is
this is
this
on
on Amazon?
this was
Okay,
on
okay,
Amazon to start.
okay.
And well, no, it was wide. I did Amazon, and I think at that time Barnes and Noble, the Nook had also, and then Kobo, Google, and iTunes was messy, but you could, or iBooks was messy, but you could get on there. Um, and I published the first 2 books at the same time and made the novella free. That was my loss leader.
Oh, interesting.
I give everyone a chance. They've never heard of me, and I gave them something to read through. Within a year, I was a full-time author, and I have been a full-time author ever since.
What
So,
gave you the clue to do the loss leader? What gave you the
I
inspiration to do that?
So this was before Kindle Unlimited, which is a program where on Amazon, people can borrow books for free. So by making a book free, it just gave someone it's a low threshold for someone to cross over to try your stories.
Okay.
And so it was just like, it's like the free samples at the supermarket, like here, try. Here's this. And you want to write it in a way that hooks them in and they want to read the next book.
Okay.
And since that time, today, I think I'm finishing my 48th novel.
Oh my God, that's
And
amazing. That's
I
amazing.
did all of those lists on my own. I have done some international deals. I've just now accepted a trad pub deal with a traditional publisher with Simon and Schuster, only because I'm looking for different exposure.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will look at publishing in a way of you have to go trad first. And I never did that. I built it my own way. And then I'm using trad as a different type of exposure. And I'm only giving them 1 book a year. So
Wow.
it's not to take over my entire business. So it's just, I think people do need to hear that there are so many other ways that you can be telling your stories that don't require someone giving you, a deal through a
Yeah.
traditional route.
Absolutely. So I just want to identify some like really pretty amazing elements that you talked about and maybe dive into those. So you talked about tapping into different communities, whether you were actually going to the places that cared about animals or like later on when you're talking about like finding communities of people who like the kind of stories that you like. You talked about um respecting your audience, and respecting your audience can be in the form of like gathering people's emails. Like these are your readers, these are your audience. And so I'd love to talk about that a little bit too. So let's talk about those 2 things. So first, tapping into communities. I know the publishing world's changed. You've become like wildly sophisticated in the way you're using these things because you've been doing it for so long. Is tapping into communities still important for
Hugely.
selling?
Particularly, so depending what medium you're using. So you could, if you're doing film, TV, books, anything that you're doing, creating some sort of community around it is going to be huge, because they're going to be, those are your super fans. Those are the ones that are going to buy your merch. They're going to fly across countries to see you. They're going to sign up for your free bonus scenes, all of the stuff that you do. And so the way that one of the reasons it was important to me to have their emails was because I don't trust Facebook. I don't trust Instagram. We don't know what's happening with TikTok. And when you build an audience there and it all goes away, how do you reach them? Even
Yeah.
selling on Amazon, selling on Barnes and Noble, all of them, they keep their vendor information to them. So they keep their buyer information. I don't get their emails. I can't reach out to them directly.
Yeah.
And so building a newsletter list is probably, for me, has been my number one best thing I've ever done for my career. And I religiously send out newsletters every 2 weeks. And I just chit chat. I'm not always selling people. I'm in there just saying, here's some fish photos I took. Here's, like, I do a little bit about my life, 4 photos, like, and it's just random stuff, but people get to know you. Because here's the other thing. And this is if you want to position yourself in front of your brand and build your brand. But the other thing is that we all know AI has become both a tool and a threat.
Yeah.
Authenticity is going to matter significantly as you move forward and you build your brand. If you can connect with people who are really interested in your storytelling in whatever medium that you're doing, and you can gather them to you, the authenticity is going to make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, Tricia. That's so important. You talked about also very gently another kind of community that you've tapped into, which is why I'm glad everyone's gathered here. You mentioned when you were writing the book about your dog and it being stolen that you actually started asking the advice of other people. I know it was like early self-publishing, but how important is it to actually surround yourself also with communities of people that are also self-publishers or people doing what you're doing, like your comrades?
It's very important, because anytime you try to do something creative in your life, you're going to have a couple people who champion you and a lot of people who tell you that it's a waste of your time, because it is traditionally outside of what a lot of people can make a living off of. And you have to find the people who are going to say, heck yeah, go do the thing, like go do it. Because the reality is like, you don't know that whether it's going to be successful for you or not. And the first one might not be successful for you, but I'm a huge proponent of failing forward. So you just keep going, because every project you do, you're going to learn from and you're going to grow from and you're going to build something, but you have to take it seriously from the beginning. Take yourself seriously. And you have to guard yourself against the naysayers in your life. And it's going to come from some of the people who are most important to you. I would have people come read my book, family members, and be like, have you considered taking a writing course? You know,
Whoa.
which is fine, because you learn down the road. Now I have all these books out and thousands and hundreds of thousands of reviews. And I've learned not to read the reviews, because entertainment is subjective in any form. But you have to find the community of people who are going to say, believe in yourself. Here's what's working for me. Here's what's trending for me. Here's what tools I'm using. And there are so many more forums and communities. There's Discords, there's Facebook groups, there's, online communities there's conferences, in a way for self-publishing that was not there when I first started. There was one really sad little forum called Kboards, and we were all on there being like, have you tried this? What about this? I mean, we were uploading Microsoft Word manuscripts and trying to format them where you move one thing and the whole thing falls
Oh
apart.
my gosh.
Like, yeah,
The
so
good old days.
yeah, it was, but community matters, because you do need to surround yourself with people who, like, being a creative is a deeply emotional thing, and you can let the self-doubt take over. And at the end of the day, the world does need your stories, particularly right now. I mean, so a lot of my romance stories have, women stepping into their power, but also like cozy and feel good vibes, and just the level of escapism that's needed. And the amount of emails I get just saying, I can't look at the news right now. I can't, like, I just need something to binge. I need comfort. I need some sort of escapism. Like these stories matter. They change people's lives. And whether that's on film, TV, what they're reading, it all can be adapted in different ways. At the end of the day, it's still a story you're telling and you're still providing an escape for people. So it does matter.
Tricia, I think that's so important. You also, when it comes to respecting audience, although I guess part of the benefit of doing self-publishing is that you don't have to ask permission to tell the stories you want to tell. You're
Right.
still listening to your audience. You do respect them. And I know sometimes certain things land that are super popular that kind of surprised you. And then sometimes you engage with them talking about what do you guys want to see more of. Can you talk a little bit about that audience engagement?
So so my husband's Scottish and we live part of the year in Scotland. And so one of my series is a Scottish series with a ghost Highland coup that jumps out of the wall and scares everyone and just thinks he's the funniest thing ever. Now, it's just this little bit of ridiculousness I put in. My Facebook group for my readers has turned into a Highland coup appreciate. Like that's all. Like I have to post men in kilts occasionally with shirts off just to remind them, like, we're here for the romance, right? Like not coup appreciation. Like I appreciate, yes, he's very cute and we all love Clyde and he's lovely, but but they've just like they really hyper fixate on the smallest things, and that becomes, so I have merch now. I have all
Mhm.
of which the merch I have created myself. You can use Canva to create merch and you just upload it with Printful or whatever. I would double check in your country in Scotland because Printful has a few restrictions there. But you can create merch so I have merch for the pubs that are in my books. I have merch for characters that are in my books,
In the town?
for town names. Yeah. So and I mean, particularly when I do the Christmas merch. I mean, this past Christmas that I made 15 grand in merch.
That's amazing. You're such a good world builder. I love wearing my merch. I have like the town name, like people come up to me and be like, "Oh, when did you visit?" Like I was like, "No, I was like trying to explain. I was like, it's from a book." But you make it feel real. You have doorways and ways for audiences to engage in your story that I think are super playful and creative, and it includes them in it. By having a t-shirt from the pub I love, I feel like I'm included in it. Which Trisha is so great. But you two, you also talk about like what do you want to see more of? You give them like little like engagements online about voting on things, which is just one, I think, can you talk a little bit about how you use
Yeah.
online?
So my very first series, the one that took off for me, was the Mystic Cove series. And it's just like a kind of a comfort read series based in Ireland. And I woke up from a dream in Ireland when I was visiting and started writing it. So that's just kind of how that started. And that series was successful, but after 12 books, I was getting a little bored. I'm like, I need to branch out. And so
12 books is a lot.
you
Wow.
know,
Yeah.
I had, so I polled my readers and I just said, what is it? Is it like, what is it that you're loving about this particular series so much? Because by the time I was at the 12th book, I'd launched a Caribbean series, I'd launched a Florida Keys series. So I had launched a couple different types of series. And I really asked them, I said, and I did this huge long poll and I thought it was going to be, the sexy Irishman and the romance, but it turned out to be, they wanted to visit their friends. They wanted to go back to these towns where they recognized the same characters and see how they were doing. And the romance was of course still important, but it was almost secondary to going back to a world that they love to visit. So for film and TV, you're going to see that in, gosh, I don't know, like shows like Cheers or Virgin River or Gilmore Girls, things like that, where people are going back because they're invested in everybody. So if you are in the process of creating something like that, you really want to think about your town or wherever it is, your spaceship, whatever it is that you're doing, is a character as well.
That's
So
so
the
smart.
people in your town, the town itself, the pub, whatever it may be, those are also characters. Those play such a huge part in the storytelling. People want to go there. They want to feel it. They want to see it. They want to be a part of it. So when you're talking about, the Gaelic language in different ways. They want to go to a music session at the pub. They want to have the romance. They want to imagine themselves being in whatever that situation may be. If it's a horror movie, they want to feel how scary it would be to be running through the Highlands and chasing off midgies like JD Kirk is doing with his, and whatever it may be. But the scene and the town and the secondary characters play almost as much of a role as the mains.
Wow,
Truly.
Tricia, that's so important. Okay, so you've named like a couple things from like merch to what you're using to publishing. Can you just, sounds a little boring, but for the folks who are listening, what are some of your main tools, like as an artist that you use? Is Instagram, social media, Amazon?
If you are looking at this if you're coming to this to write a digital, like an ebook story, as well as turning that into a print book, the actual tools I use is honestly the easiest. You can write in Microsoft Word. There is Scrivener, which is a paid one, which you can write and you can make notes for all your characters on the side. I have just always done it in Microsoft Word, so I'm very used to that. But what I do then is there is a lovely, beautiful, my favorite company in the world called Vellum that you upload your manuscript to, and it formats it all for you. So you can
Oh,
put those
wow.
chapter headings, you can add images, and it gives you not only the ebook, but it will give you the interior file, what you see when you make a print book. It gives you all of that. And you just put it in, you do all the
So,
design things, and it's super easy to use. And it's fantastic because it makes, as an indie publisher, you're able to create a print book in your hands that looks just as nice as what the trad pubs are doing.
wow.
For So those are, I mean, write in whatever you feel comfortable writing. Vellums for formatting. For social media, Book Talk is absolutely huge. I don't know what's going to happen with TikTok. And I
Yeah,
know for the UK, that's a little different than what's going to happen in the US. But if you are trying to build an audience, the US is, I mean, the US loves Scotland. They
yeah,
love Scottish stories. They love like all of them. You all, I'm sure all of you know, you have heard people come over and say, my great uncle was, I'm 10% Scottish and all that. They want that connection with it. So whatever you're building, you can build an audience. Say you're trying to start, say you're doing a film or you're doing a screenplay, right? Start on TikTok now. Start on
yeah.
Instagram Reels now. Walk around outside. My biggest views I get is when I'm in Scotland, and literally this is what I do. I say, hi, I'm romance author Tricia O'Malley. Come for a walk with me. I'm going to get a coffee. And then I just flip the camera around and all Americans are like,
I
it's so
know.
beautiful there. I'm like, it is beautiful here. Look at it. And it requires, it's like the most low-hanging fruit for engagement, because if you're not yet comfortable, and I still struggle with talking in front of the camera or making TikToks or doing any of that. If you're not comfortable with that, you can start there. Or you can say, come along with the day with me as I'm writing my screenplay or as I'm scouting locations for where I think I want to set my next movie. All of that, people just want to see, they want to be involved. And it's a really easy way to be authentic, bring people in. And if you're not fully comfortable with being on camera yet, you can just do a small little snippet or even a voiceover. You can
Yeah,
film what you're looking at and talk over it and say, come along for a day with me in scouting locations for where I want to set my film. And then just
yeah.
you can talk over it. And if that's not even comfortable for you, you can enter a script on TikTok and other places, and you can have a voice read it for you.
Oh, that's really smart too.
Yes. So I do think, depending on your audience age group, Instagram and TikTok are a little bit better. Discord is good for finding certain communities, depending on what your subject matter is. Facebook is having its ups and downs right now, particularly because they tend to, if you put anything in a post with a link, they suppress it because Facebook wants you to pay for advertising. Even in my private Facebook group, if I put a post with a link, it hides it, even though people are specifically in this group to see what I have to say. So again, this is why I always circle back to making sure you have a newsletter as a backup. But I think your cheapest, fastest, most free way of doing this is Instagram Reels and TikTok Reels for building an audience who
Do
don't
you
know
see
who
if
you
there's
are.
a direct correlation between the people who view coming, like I view you going to a shop to get coffee, and I live in Scotland, and I'm like, it's still soothing to me. So do you find there's a direct correlation between people who watch that and actually buy your book?
Yeah, well, so I find that people watch them and they may not buy my book right away, but they come back or they will come to my newsletter.
Okay.
So I think the people who are having success on Book Talk, which is huge and has really driven success for a lot of new authors, are TikTok's very interesting. You're getting followers, but you're not getting, it's just people are just doing it for viral videos. They want the
Yeah.
viral videos to take off. So it's, you're not always seeing the people you follow, and that's the weird algorithm there, but it's free. Again, it's free.
Yeah.
It just costs you your time. So when you're on a budget and you're not, like, I do paid advertising as well. I pay for Amazon placements, I pay for Facebook ad placements. But when I was starting out, I didn't have that. So
Yeah.
use the free tools to build your audience, talk to them in any way that you're comfortable with. And if as storytellers and as potential filmmakers or digital storytellers, living where you do and what you're hoping to write about, you have a wealth of opportunity at your doorstep. Stuff that
Yeah.
you probably take for granted living there or walk past every day, where other people are looking at going, that's so cool. Like, just because it's different.
Absolutely, absolutely, Tricia. So okay. Can we do some real talk about
Yes.
actually how hard you work? So, although I know like publishing yourself is not panacea, or like making your own work, content, and distributing it yourself isn't, but it is a cool opportunity. Although, like, you work so hard. There's so much to manage. There's social media, there's your books, there's publishing, there's the community, there's your merch. So, how hard do you work? What does a day in the life of you look like?
So at this point, I have a couple assistants and my husband runs all my advertising. Um, and I'm still working very hard. But I will preface that by saying that is like I will say this is because that is my personality, in that um so when if you're working with a trad pub, they move really slowly. And I'm sure you found that in film and TV as well. It
Yeah.
goes so slowly. But when you just get to, no one's telling you how fast you can write or how fast you can create or how fast you can deliver this to an audience. I mean, it's like a dog off the leash. Like, why not? Why
Yeah.
not go put your stories out there? No one's telling me. I have a friend, and true, like, she is killing it. She publishes 3 books a month. She used to be a journalist, and she was used to really, really tough deadlines. And she just says, I could never imagine looking at my boss and saying, no, I'm not gonna write that story for you, because
Yeah.
they were so deadline driven with newsletters. So she just turns them out. That's all she does. She writes 9,000 words a day and she edits 3 chapters a day. And
Oh my gosh.
she's a year and a half ahead on what she's publishing. It's insane. I do 4 books a year, so I'm nothing like her, but still, it's you can do as much as you want. Like, with Trad Pub, it's, you're writing a year out, and then the readers have to wait an entire year for the next book in the series. But when you're running your own business, it's on you to say how much you want to or not. And let me tell you, when you start getting some success and the money starts rolling in, you go, maybe I'm gonna do another book. Maybe I don't need to go to happy hour Friday night. I'll
Yeah.
work. Maybe I'll go Saturday night. Like, you start balancing. When you are free to work as hard or as little as you want, it's really motivating when you see your career start taking off. And now I am bumping up a little bit against having to take some space and throttle back, because I've been going a little too hard.
Yeah.
But now I have 46 books working as my backlist. That is, my husband is constantly advertising for me. I could take months off and my sales will keep coming in. This is now
Wow.
passive income. We can travel. We just spent 5 months traveling Australia, New Zealand, Sri Lanka, Bonaire, Scotland. And I was making money the entire time because I've now built a
Yeah.
working backlist for myself. And this was all done just me running when I was starting out. It was just me. And a lot of people I know, it is just them. And they
Yeah.
only get to a point where they hire an assistant down the road. And frankly, I struggle with that because it still creates more work for you because you have to then manage people. So at the end of the day, if you just want to write a book and build a newsletter and film some TikToks, you can still take off. You
Yeah.
can still reach your audience. It comes down to knowing your brand, being consistent in what you're delivering, and start with building your worlds and having some audience engagement.
That's so good, Trisha. Thank you. You know, yeah, okay, so you mentioned a couple things like TikTok, Amazon,
Mhm.
also AI. There's some variables coming up, like
Yeah.
paradigm shifting variables, and you're so good about, I think, for me, anticipating some of these variables and figuring out routes through. So for you, what's been on your mind about the future of how this is working?
I'm a little concerned with I'm very much concerned with AI and the respect of using it to just write stories. I think it can be a useful tool for research. But I personally try to stay away from it. But what's happening is Amazon's getting flooded with AI books, and that's
Mm.
why authenticity is mattering more. Building your audience is mattering more. So
Can
I
we go
have
to sorry, can we go to something specific? Because when I was with you, this happened that AI was flooding. I thought it was so interesting. AI was flooding Amazon with books. And so they created a new rule in reaction to that. Like you could only post 3 things a day or do 3 things a day. Is that
Oh
still
yeah,
the case?
they've changed it now.
Have
There was
they? Okay.
backlash, yeah. So you couldn't upload more than like 1 or 2 books a day or something. So I think they've shifted that in a backlash because people
Okay.
will like if I find a typo in my book and I want to re-upload the manuscript, I just want
That's
to
fair.
do that, and like I
Yeah.
should be able to do that. So you have a lot of control when you self-publish. You can change your covers, you can change typos, you can add bonus scenes. Bonus scenes are a huge mailing list builder.
What's a
So
bonus thing for folks who don't know?
at the end of my books, I'll say, hey, when you want more of so and so, sign up to read this bonus scene. And then I just write like another little story in the world. They adopt a dog, they get married, they do something fun, whatever, depending what genre you're in. So it's just like where they can be with their friends a little bit longer. And all they have to do is join your mailing list. So it's free, but
That's
it's
so
a really,
smart.
really good builder for mailing lists. Um,
That's so
as
smart.
for the landscape of publishing and moving forward, it's there's always opportunity there. It's a little bit more saturated right now with people really understanding just how much money and how much of a like career you can make as a
Yeah.
self-publisher. But you need to treat it as a business. This is your business. You are self-employed, you are an entrepreneur, you need to protect your time. And I will tell you this too, if you have other jobs and you're in school and you're or a stay-at-home mom or whatever it is, busy people get stuff done. So don't let
Yeah.
that stand in your way because you can take your lunch hour, you can wake up an hour earlier, you can get a half hour to hour a day, you write 1,000 words a day. That's a book in a matter of 3 months. So
Trisha,
it's,
yeah.
yeah,
That's a really, really, your fingers are always for me like on the pulse of things you sent me, and it had nothing to do with the book world, but it has to do with the storytelling world and world building world. You sent me a link to these like super short,
the real shorts or
yeah,
drama
the real
box.
shorts.
Yeah.
Tell me why you're interested in those, because I think you're thinking about them so interesting.
Well, I think that people's attention spans are getting pulled in so many directions with the different types of media now. I'm noticing that people are reading shorter books. Shorter books are selling just as well as longer books. And there's been a real huge growth in a few apps. I think it was like Real Short and something maybe Drama Box. And
Mhm.
they're like these 1 minute stories. So it's like like the Spanish telenovelas where it's super dramatic. So it's for, this is coming out of like K-pop and Japan and everything where they have all these um really, really short little dramas that everyone's following, but now they're translating it to the United States market. And I have friends who are actors in LA who are doing these all the time because it's giving them consistent work.
Mm.
And it's just 1 minute clips and they're episodes, and then they boom to the next, boom to the next, boom to the next. And that is then I've seen that copied by some people in their TikTok storytelling. So once you get
Interesting.
along and a big enough following on TikTok, you create these playlists and people start watching your little 1 minute, and you always leave it on a cliffhanger. You bring them to the next because they want to watch. And you can do that with YouTube Shorts as well. You can do that with, be careful whatever medium that you're publishing on, because YouTube has certain restrictions if you're in the romance genre, or what you're allowed to say and do. So obviously check wherever you're publishing videos. But that's a real huge audience engagement. And it's people, busy moms and people who are commuting and stuff, they're just quick watching it on their phone, and they can get a couple episodes in and then on they go. So it's another medium to try out.
That's so smart. And I saw that when you sent me that, I was looking through some of these series that are a minute long episodes, and then like you can watch a couple and then they lock you out, and you either have to, like what the old Candy Crush game used to do, you either have to wait like 24 hours and the next one opens, or you have to pay. And I was thinking, gosh, short form storytelling, it's so, so powerful. And we talked about the power of the novella coming back. So yeah, things seem to be shortening. Tricia, that's so, so cool. So really, before we turn it over to the audience, because I know people have questions, can you tell us a little bit about what you're working on next? What are you working on?
So I am just finishing up book 7 in my Enchanted Highlands series today. That is going to publish in April. And that's been a wildly successful series for me. I think it's because I'm sort of translating a little bit of the Scots to the Americans, and the Americans there's a lot of Americans frothing to leave the US and places. So they love reading about leaving home and moving elsewhere. So that is coming out in April. And then I am on my first pass of my traditional published book with Simon and Schuster. That's coming out in August. That's called Love's a Witch. And that is a cozy romantasy that is
Set in
coming out
Scotland.
in August, set in Scotland. So
That
those
is,
are the things I'm working on.
there's already like two killer Scottish series that I am super fans of. I cannot wait for that one. Tricia, really congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being so candid and sharing all your secrets.
Can I make one point? So Jessica
Yes.
has optioned one of my stories, and I have a TV agent as well now, and a couple of my other stories that are looking to be adapted. So also keep that in mind when I talk about your stories can be used in so many different things. You can write novellas that'll be perfect for screen down the road, and you can self-publish them and then adapt them as screenplays. So a story doesn't just have to live in one spot. And I'm not even talking about we didn't even touch on, but translations, um, audiobooks. I mean,
Okay.
there's graphic audio so you take your story and you can use that IP across so many things. So think of it in a broader scope than just film or TV or an ebook. It can live in so many different ways.
Tricia, you have audio books. They're bigger productions than just audiobooks, right? The characters have different voices, they speak.
Yeah, so I have a deal with Graphic Audio. So they are a company that they produce them as if it's a play. So they have all the characters are cast. You hear the cars going by in the background, the music, everything. So it's really like listening to an actual play. And then my other books I have as just a dual point of view. So I just have a narrator reading the male and the female point of view. So there's different ways to do that as well.
So cool. That's so cool. And I'm really glad you added that point that the story is just the beginning and it can translate to all those different mediums. So please, again, if you have questions, you're free to write them in the chat box, or I guess you don't even need to raise your hand. Just please jump on in if you guys have any questions for Tricia. And you please feel free to, if you have a certain thing that you're thinking about doing and you want opinions or thoughts on it, please feel free to share a little bit here if you're coming here with already an idea in mind.
I do see one question about Substack. So I have quite a few authors that are either doing Patreon, Substack, or Kickstarters, and all have very differing levels of what they're doing. I have one author friend who's using Kickstarter to launch special box sets, and she's doing it with the goal of it becomes its own ecosystem and it'll start recommending you down the road. So she's going to do several campaigns with the goal to get it up to about 250,000 in the next 2 years. So she's starting very small and then she's building up. So when you think about using Kickstarter for a film or TV or something of that nature, you want to think maybe a little bit more long-term than just the first project. For Substack, I have not done Substack. I have many authors that are enjoying it because they're moving from Patreon to Substack. So and I keep dancing back and forth on doing either of them. But right now, I want to be careful where my time is. And for me, the best thing is always writing the next book, doing my newsletter, and connecting with my readers. And whenever I get too overwhelmed, I drill back to those 3 components that are the most important for me. So adding one more thing like a Substack would be I have to create articles, I have to create a story, I have to do one more thing this week. So no, but that doesn't mean that I might not in the future.
And I think Substack, there's pros and cons. Substack's opening itself up to including podcasts, more videos, things like that. However, to your point, you don't get to collect their emails. So at the end of the day, I don't.
You might.
Do you?
Substack.
When I signed up, you couldn't.
Oh, okay. I think that one of them has changed it, but I don't know if that's Patreon or Substack.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and there was a company called Ream specific to authors that was trying to do something like that as well, where you could keep their emails. So yeah, it's another way to reach your audience. At the end of the day, you'd want to be able to collect in their emails and you want to be directly in touch with them. Because now when I have a book coming out and I send an email, I get a bestseller tag on, like I get sales like that. So, but I have almost 100,000 on my newsletter now, just because I've built it up over the years.
Amazing.
So
That's amazing. Tricia, inspired by you, we decided to forego some traditional sales agents and put Stella on Amazon. And then are experimenting with how you get people to actually rent a movie. And we found that currently, which is probably going to go down, but 1 out of every 8 people who watch our YouTube clips end up renting the film.
that's
which
cool.
is not bad. So YouTube has been our biggest doorway into getting people to rent a film, which is a bit of a
And YouTube has YouTube Shorts now. So if you're not ready to put longer clips up or do something like that, the shorts are a way you can take your TikToks and your Reels and use them as YouTube Shorts. And after, I think they've lowered the barrier a little bit. I think you can start monetizing YouTube after 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah, you need like 2 things now. You need like a certain amount of subscribers and one of 2 things, like a video that has hit a certain thing. They're like adding in all these game dynamics for you to like create, but then there's 2 tiers of income. So they have lowered the bar, but then there's a second tier of income where your percentage goes up if you have more followers. Does anyone have any other questions while we have Tricia here? Can I ask by just like a show of hands or even in the chat box, the folks who are here who are thinking of applying for the fund, who here is a writer? Are you guys writing a script, writing a book, writing a story? Feel shy, you can write it in the chat box if you feel like it. Who here's a filmmaker? You guys thinking more like film?
That ring, I had it on Do Not Disturb.
No one is thinking, yes.
Yes, what are you? Hi.
I would love to write a book, but it would actually be non-fiction. So I don't know if that fits within
Of course.
the remit for the fund and
But
the challenge.
Definitely. For the fund, the only thing that we stipulate is that we want it to have a digital element there about how you're selling it and how you're getting it out to market and things, so that it's not going necessarily down those traditional routes. It's to create some new opportunities. That's the only thing in it. It's absolutely open to you to come up with an idea that you would like to spend some time working on and putting together. So no restrictions on whether it's fact or fiction or whether there's writing in it or not. And I think what's been great with what Tricia's talked about today is that while she's talking about it in respect to writing, so much of the ideas that Tricia's talked about apply no matter what you're looking at, and just in those ways of approaching and building up audiences and generating numbers. So yeah, basically, as long as it's slightly different to your day job, then it would be great. Something new, and that would be brilliant.
One thing.
And just to remind you, Tricia's first book was nonfiction.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was, yeah. And there's two resources that might be helpful to you. One is called Let's Get Digital. It is a free download on Amazon by the author David Gaughran. He kind of walks people through the process of how to start writing a book, like how to get it online or get it in front of people. The other is a Facebook group called 20 Books to 50K. And their entire premise is basically in the Facebook group name, which is by the time you write 20 books, you should be able to make 50K. And so when you go into that Facebook group at the top, they have loads of pinned files and things like that. And there are a lot of nonfiction writers in there that will have posts that may direct you to some resources that can help better than what I can as well.
Thank you.
Tricia, thank you. Is anybody here thinking of like a TV series or a game or something kind of large? No, everyone's just, that's okay. You can keep your project secret until you apply. Tricia, okay, here's a teaser question. If someone was going to give you a grant, let's say 5K, to spend on developing a innovative idea that you've always wanted to just try, is there something in your arsenal that you're like, yeah, I would definitely try the short form fiction series. I would try, what would you do?
For me, it would be adapting one of my works to film or TV, just because it's a medium that I haven't quite gotten out into yet. So I really I've written a few screenplays now, so it was very interesting to kind of like scratches a different itch in my brain of like side of my brain of how to go from telling, book novels to translating that to screen. So I think I would probably look at what I could invest in to bring that story to film, what that would take, what locations and directors and all that stuff, and just kind of like the meat of bringing something that's in your head to life. Oh gosh, if I wasn't doing that and I just needed to invest it in a book, I would invest it in a really good cover and a really good editor.
Okay.
And if I had money left, it would be in some AMS advertising.
Okay. That makes sense. That totally makes sense. Does anyone, before we let Tricia go, does anyone have any other questions about the fund itself or for Tricia or applying? Okay.
Will there be more information going up about the fund?
I'll put more out again, put more out to either tonight or first thing tomorrow morning. I better not say, I promise it'll be tonight, but it might be the morning, but I will put more out then. And as I said, on in the chat box, there's a web link that takes you to information about it. And the other thing, as I said, is if anybody wants to get in touch with me, that's ian.hamilton@highend.co.uk. So I'll put that up as well.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, particularly with, if you're doing nonfiction, depending what it is, if it's obviously going to be related to Scotland, like you have so many resources for building audiences online just at your doorstep, as I was saying before. So really utilize building these audiences around your subject matter, because people get really interested in particular subject matters. And it's like one of my favorite things is watching people geek out about something they're really interested in, because you learn something. So use what you have at your doorstep. I mean, you can really build a digital following that way.
One of my favorite things to watch now on Instagram are kind of nonfiction stuff. There's something called History with Amy that I think is just wonderful. And it's a woman who's green screened or projected a portrait behind her and just chats about the historical relevance of the portrait and the storytelling in it. And she did it over and over again, and she has a massive following and now a book deal. So even those small little examples of it is nonfiction, it's not even a story. She's just sharing her passion, really does translate and work. Tricia, I just want to thank you again so much. I feel like you've brought up so many important points and perspectives of what it means to be an artist and also run your own business and take your work seriously, and the tools that are out there. I think in this fund, and for the applicants, we're really looking at people who are willing to take that risk and understand how there are other innovative ways of taking their stories or their ideas to market. And you've given them on a silver platter some really interesting options. So really, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Callum, I see your mic's off. I just want to check to make sure you didn't have a question.
Yeah, actually, I actually was going to ask a
Oh,
question.
good.
Yeah,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
Thank you very much. I was just going to say, Tricia, thanks for your time. But secondly, what do you think, just to link it round to Gaelic, I guess, what do you think is the biggest attraction to the Gaelic language that maybe Gaelic speakers take for granted? You talk about obviously what's on our doorstep there and what we don't lean into. So just from your own storytelling perspective, what do you think is that biggest pull towards the Gaelic language?
So I think that particularly coming from an American standpoint is there is such a romantic history to it. It's just a beautiful language, and people are always wanting to learn where it comes from and what the roots of it are. And this actually, thank you for bringing it up because it reminded me, have any of you heard of an Instagram account? Her name is I think it's Miss Punny Penny. She has written a book called, I'm going to say it wrong, Poems. It's how the Scots say poems, like my poems, but she spelled it that way. She does like a Gaelic word of the day. And so she'll go on, and now she's had a bit of a difficult, I think, back history. So some of her stuff is a little bit darker because I believe she's dealt with some sexual assault, and she was in a documentary about it as well. But people just are absolutely following her just to hear what the word of the day is. And it's something very, very simple. So if you can speak it and you can bring that to people, they're very much interested. Hearing anybody, first of all, talking a Scottish accent is delightful for anyone outside of Scotland. One of the best accents in the world. So if you're sitting there and you're explaining it and you're talking about it, and I will say for book talk girlies, there's this one Scotsman who's always on there talking just about how to be more romantic, and like he has this huge following now, and he reads stuff from books just in his accent. People watch just even for that alone, and it's going to be the same for on the women's side of it as well. So I think the connection to the language, the history behind it, and it doesn't have to be long-winded, just these little snippets, these word of the day, a line from a song. I mean, I was caught up, I was following my husband around the other day about the song Caledonia.
Yeah.
And I'll take the high road, you take the low road. And he's always said it was about two people in battle, and they were imprisoned, and one went, but it's not, it's about a lover. So I didn't know that, and he didn't know. So I was watching the Scottish guy explain the true roots of it on the story, and I'm following around. I'm like, you weren't right about this. This is what. So just having the history behind that and just delivering it in really digestible small snippets is going to be very interesting for people. And it's racking up views everywhere. And I obviously follow a lot of Scottish stuff, so I can be adding these tidbits into my stories as well. But it's really, people respond like from all over the world about it.
Yeah.
Punny Penny, I was just looking, she's the one that does Scots. She's a Scots speaker, Scots poet.
Yes.
Yeah, she's great.
She's got a good Instagram account.
Yeah, she's very good.
Mm-hmm. But it's a simple concept. And the thing is like, you can do that too. Like, she doesn't have to be the only one delivering that. Like, you can do the same. It's the same as why a McDonald's opens up across from a Burger King or whatever. Like, you can do the same. You can offer the same thing. Like, that's okay. Like, you're not stepping on anyone's toes. It's just you're going to reach your audience in your own way. And by bringing up the language and talking to people, I mean, everyone is going to be interested. You just have to be, it's all about consistency. just build it up slowly.
I don't want to leave anyone out. Does anyone have any other questions before we have to go? Ian, do you have any other end comments of housekeeping before, in terms of application deadlines?
The application deadline, oops, am I on?
You're good.
The application deadline is the 10th of March. So there's a wee bit of time for you to get something in. And yeah, definitely, Sophie, if you wouldn't mind sharing, and just, you know, if there's anybody that you think might be interested, it'd be great to see some stuff coming through. The other thing is, regardless of whether anybody's successful in this or not, is that if you do have an idea that you're wanting to work with, be happy to have a chat and see if there's some way that we can help, even if it's not part of the grant. That's so, well, what we're here to try and do, at least. That's and I think the other thing I would just throw in is that when Expo North was running and we had the big conferences, we did several sessions that were in Gaelic and had translation for non-Gaelic speakers. The one thing I found was that there was folk from all over the world who were at the event, and from all the big companies like Sony and all them all went in to hear this, because for them, hearing Gaelic being spoken and hearing what people were talking about, what they were thinking about, so it didn't even have to be something that was traditional to Scotland. It could be something like what, you know, the latest mainstream pop records. It didn't really matter. It was about getting that perspective that was a different perspective to the one they heard, and hearing the language and involvement as well. So there's definitely scope there to do something, and hopefully something exciting. So
That's great. Thank you. And Tricia, thank you again.
Welcome.
Really appreciate your time with us, and I cannot wait to read your new series and see what everyone applies with. So thank you.
And if something pops in any of your heads later and you just want to reach out, please do so. It's triciaomalley.com. You can find me there. So
Thanks, Tricia. All right. Thank you very much.
thanks. Thank you.
Good luck applying, everyone.
Live. Thank you very much.
Great.
bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.